So in the 38 years in your career, um, I don't suppose you worked in safety that whole time.
No, my first 12 years were spent in highway design, and then the last 25 and a half have been in traffic engineering. So,
Okay, traffic, yeah,
yeah.
so good. So thinking specifically of safety, and this, you and I talked about the systemic approach that you all take. That's a relatively recent thing, right? In the last few years to start thinking that way, or how do you all incorporate that?
Yeah, we've been, before they came up with the buzzword systemic safety treatments, we were doing, things like RFBs, giving RFBs out to towns. Where when I first started putting in RFBs to get them installed and put in, they were costing like 20,000, for a set installed. And I found out I could buy a set for back then around $4,000. So the rest of that was installation and markup. So we started thinking, what can we do to get a better bang for our buck? And so we looked at giving RFBs to the municipalities. Their cost share would be the installation piece. And they weren't paying $16,000 for installation. A lot of times it was probably another 3 or 4,000. So, I mean, that it was a better bang for our buck, and we were getting, far more of those out there. Every year I go to a trade show called ATSA. I can't remember. It's American.
It's
Yeah.
American Transportation or Safety.
Yeah, but
I know ATSA. I know.
so their convention is, they have a floor, about the size of a super Walmart, and all the vendors are out there. And to me, it's invaluable to be able to go and talk to those vendors. And from talking to those vendors, that's where we got the ideas for the speed feedback signs. That's where we got the idea for the in-the-road pedestrian signs, because we give those out. The school zone signs with the speed feedback sign in them. Those are all ideas that came from going and talking to people on the floor. And, honestly, what I do is every time before I go to that show, I pull out a strategic highway safety plan and I read up, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to if I find something that fits, make a play for money on that. Here's, somebody shows me a solution that's a good solution, then I'm, open to us spending HSIP money on that. So then I talk to Bob and Dennis, and we talk about, how can we make this fit and get the biggest bang for our buck. So we were doing systemic type treatments before, the buzzwords really came out. So.
And you're doing some of that kind of work. This project is more about the intersection work that's
Yes.
going on. So tell me what's going on there.
So we've had problem intersections, in the state for a while, and what do we do with them? We got some, that have a lot of angle crashes. They don't have the volumes that would meet a traffic signal warrant. And when you look at the warrants in the METCD for an always stop, sometimes those volumes don't quite meet what we have out there. But because of sight distance issues and crash issues, we've kind of melded that a little bit, and we kind of bend that a little bit to cure some of the problems we're having out there, because the traditional fixes just wouldn't work, or, it's not a place that we'd want a traffic signal. So, that's allowed us to really dig in deep on some of these things where we've had a lot of K&A crashes that wouldn't have risen to the top for other reasons. And when you start talking always stop, at $6,000-7,000 an intersection, it's a huge bang for our buck. North Carolina has done a ton of always stops, and we really kind of mirrored their program. They did it with all the bells and whistles. They just went in and put up stop signs out there. I was very leery of doing that. We have long tradition of years people going through an area. Just sticking up a stop sign, I wasn't comfortable, having that be the solution. So putting ones with the flashing LED borders and putting stop aheads with flashers also, really to call attention that there's a change out there. Now, after those signs wear out, I'm not looking to go back and replace them with flashers, but, until people get used to it, for me, it's worth that extra money to know that I've done what I can to get people to stop. And we've been very successful with the program. I think out of all the ones that we put in, we've had 2 intersections where we've had one each where we've had a pretty significant crash because somebody ran through the stop sign on what used to be the through. And, then we go and take a look at it. What can we do to make that more conspicuous? And in some cases, we've added more pavement markings, just trying to call people's attention to what's going on out there. I think people are doing a lot more things other than driving. That's been a huge problem. And while it's illegal to have, talk on your phone and everything's got to be hands-free, you can pull up to any intersection here and look over, and there are people doing things they're not supposed to. So, our chief engineer, coined a phrase is it's our job to distract the distracted driver from being distracted. And, that's unfortunate that we haven't to, get to that level, but that's pretty much all the things why we're doing things with the flashing signs, really to pull people back to pay attention to the roadway.
Are you involved or know how these intersections are prioritized, like which ones they're doing? Because that's part of what Jeff and all them were doing with that analysis is you have 36,000 intersections, I've learned.
Yeah.
It's like, as low cost as these are, you can't put them everywhere.
Yep.
So can you talk a little bit about how these are prioritized and how that may be different than they used to do in the past?
A lot of them have come from places that I would call frequent flyers, that we've had issues there before. And those are the real ones that we started with. We've had public complaints. So we already know they want to do something out there. So we chose those first. We had a couple places where, one place in particular where the town didn't want to have something done. They didn't want to do the always stop. About a week after they ran us out of town, there was a fatal crash there, and then they're calling us back. What can we do? And it was like, well, we already offered you the solution. Here's the solution again. Let's go put that up there. We as a department were always kind of afraid of some of the higher speed ones, putting an always stop out there. The one with the fatal was a 55 mile an hour approach, and we introduced a step down speed through there, to get people to, hopefully slow down before they get to the always stop. So, that part's changed in our thinking. Originally, we were talking really about doing 40s and 45s. Now that we've done one at a higher speed, we know that we can go out to the other ones. So it's opening our target area to look at that. So where we can pull out where we've had, Dennis Edmondy's been working with the expected versus excess and predicted crashes and coming up with hotspot areas where we're seeing excess crashes out there, and we're using those to to set some of these areas. Also, we're trying to get it in areas. We have a lot of problems in this state with people going out and shooting things because, it's fun to shoot things. And trying to get these in areas where there are houses around so that people aren't going to shoot them. I've had message boards shot. I've had speed feedback signs shot. And so, kind of balancing, where our trouble spots are with where we'd be able to keep something. I've had lighting sawn down on a rural roundabout because somebody, I don't know why they didn't like it, because there really wasn't a house around that it was shining into, but people do strange things. But yeah, it's focusing on the Ks and As where we're seeing more than should be out there, and trying to target those areas. And you know, it is a tough sell in some communities, and for us to be able to point to our successes that we've had in other areas is important. So,
And I think Jeff was saying you're getting some really good results. Like I think a couple of these, 97% reductions. I mean, that's
yeah, we've had have a lot right in the 90 area, but that's still that's significant. Somebody doesn't have to lose a loved one. Someone doesn't have to spend time in the hospital. I think that's huge. So,
well, it's life changing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, and to be able to show that you have. So maybe kind of rephrase that or start that thought over. Is like if I were to ask you, what are some of the results that you all have seen from some of the installs you've done so far?
well, I think it's the reduction in injury crashes is the big thing. It's hard with fatals. I mean, anybody could die on any roadway in the state. It's hard to predict. You know, you get one in a certain location, you probably never see another one again. So, yes, it's great that we're preventing fatals, but I think those are harder to quantify because they're so unpredictable. But injury crashes is a big thing, and if we're starting to see a pattern of injury crashes, you know, that's indicative that's probably going to happen more. So if we hit those hot spots and get those out of there, but it's kind of interesting when you look at the numbers. We've got all these reduction in injuries, but our injuries are still high. So, you know, I don't know how to explain that portion of it. It's just it moves us to go look at different areas, but
You're
it's
not
tough.
alone in that. There's a lot of states, most states, who've done a lot of the safety work and been working at this, and then their crashes are still
Yeah.
going up. And so then you get into the argument with only two ways to see it: this stuff isn't working, or how many more crashes would we have had? Right. So that's a hard way to articulate it.
Yeah.
It's like cost prevention type stuff. How much money would we would have to pay if we hadn't done this? Is tough.
Yeah, no, it just seems like we're running on a treadmill sometimes. We're doing a lot of effort, but we haven't gotten that. You know, we're seeing results in the stuff that we're doing, but when you look at the total numbers, it's kind of discouraging. And then it makes it hard to keep pushing for, hey, we need this money. You know, we can show reductions at spot locations, but we need to do more on the systemic piece. But yes, you know, how many people would have died if we hadn't put an RFB at a crosswalk, or we hadn't lit a crosswalk, or we hadn't told somebody to slow down. You know, we have no idea, you know, what we do on day to day and how that impacts out there. But we just got to keep moving forward because that's what we're here for. So.
That's it. Anything else I haven't asked you about this project, or systemic approach, or that you think it's important for like your peers, because this is for people like you out in the agency?
Yeah, you know, a lot of people are doing things with road diets. We have a road over in western Maine, Route 4, it's in Turner and Auburn. We've had a lot of crashes out there. And on the southern end of this corridor, we have a 4-lane section coming into a 3-lane. And, you know, we're going to look at making that a 3-lane. And there's a huge area out there that's control of access. So there isn't need for people turning or whatever. We're looking at installing cable guardrail in the middle of the road, similar to what we're doing what they're doing over in Europe in a lot of places. And, you know, it sounds crazy, but we need to try different things in order to get people, you know, attention. And that project's going to allow us to actually cut some pavement out, you know, excess pavement, which is going to save money further down the road and what we got to pave, but it'll also slow people down. And, you know, we've always been about mobility And when you look at our design practices, it's all been for mobility, and I think that's what's gotten us into the issues that we have, and we're not the only ones that are seeing that. Is, you know, how do we balance mobility and safety, and that's gonna.
And primarily mobility of cars.
Yes.
And we talk a lot about, I mean, that's every town in America, right?
Yeah.
We built our towns around moving the cars.
Yeah.
And so that's what's gotten us here.
Yeah.
That's why now we're having to undo infrastructure to then redo it for pedestrians, bicyclists, that's not you only, that is everybody.
Yeah.
That's where we live, it's everywhere.
I mean, that's a huge change for a lot of designers who are like, no, the mobility is important, speed's important, and it's hard to start pulling the reins in, and you start doing things to decrease mobility. It really sends up a red flag with some people, so it's hard to
And the
get
people
buy-in.
in the towns, I mean, they're used to being able to drive fast on that road.
Yep.
You know, we have one in our town right now that's a giant, it's a range war. It's this beautiful scenic area. It's 1.8 miles. Everybody loves to drive. And the roads are as wide as an interstate.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And it's just through this little residential, and they're trying to narrow the lanes, put in a multi-use path, and you'd think we were burning their houses down.
Yep.
Like, don't slow me down, ever.
Yeah, no, Jeff talked about town Vassalboro. He said they had the tubular markers out there that was slowing people down. We did one similar last year in town, and the complaints that we got were, these things are too close together, I have to slow down to go through it. I'm like, you know, that's why we're doing it, you know, and they just don't, it's impacting me negatively, so it must be a bad thing. So
We have our
that's,
main street and our historic downtown, they narrowed the lanes, took the parking from that kind of herringbone to parallel, widened the sidewalks, complete streets stuff, really nice.
yeah,
And that was the thing. I can't, like, I have to drive so slow going down Harrison Avenue now. You go,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Or I don't even drive on Harrison Avenue anymore. We go, even better.
Yeah.
Just park. There's so many other side roads where you can get, but they, it's so funny that they don't hear the words they're saying out loud. It's like, yes,
Yeah.
they're offended that they have to slow down in a fully, like a little downtown area where people want to
They think
shop.
it's bad design. It's like, no.
Yeah, you guys
That's
screwed up
what
this
we
design.
wanted.
We had to drive so slow. It's like,
Yeah.
that's right. They don't, yeah. They don't
you
see
know,
it.
going back to, we didn't discuss really its speed, but, you know, 85th percentile, back when that was really, you know, set up, the cars that were on the road, you could actually feel the road. Cars today, with all the safety improvements, you can't feel the road anymore. You have no idea how fast you're going. And I don't think a lot of people are speeding to be malicious. I just think it feels comfortable for them. And, you know, we've gotten to the point where we've got to make people feel uncomfortable to get them to slow down. And I'm not saying that we should change the cars and go back, because a lot of safety advances have happened on that, but it's just it's an unintended consequence. And, you know, now we've got to do other types of engineering to counteract that, because that's a huge problem. And I find myself doing it.
Yeah.
You know, you look down, you're like, oh, I shouldn't be going that fast. And, you know, and I have no idea. You know, I was thinking about work or thinking about something that's gone on during the day, and, you know, you're just kind of numbing it, and you're like, yeah, and that's why we gotta, you know, the whole thing, distract the distracted driver, get something, flashing lights, bring people's attention back.
I like
to-
that. The distracted drivers from being distracted. Yeah. It's good. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I do too.
This is great.
Yeah.
You're all done.
All right.
Yeah, not so bad.